We're back with a bonus conversation you'll see only here on CBS News New York. I want to talk about presidential politics. I recently saw you introducing Ron DeSantis at a fundraiser, a campaign event really, in Staten Island. I wonder how you feel about his campaign here in New York, his, I guess, expected presidential campaign here in New York and around the country.
As you pointed out, he hasn't announced yet. Also this week, Governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, was in
another
New York
one
City.
of your campaign supporters.
I was with him this past Wednesday. He also hasn't announced, hasn't decided to run. It'll be really interesting to see what the field looks like. So if you're going to handicap, how does one person do? It really depends on what the field looks like.
So what do you think the field should be? I mean, there's a part of me that thinks that if a lot of people run, it's going to be an opening for Donald Trump. So do you think Donald Trump should be the nominee, or do you think there's a time for new blood?
I think there's going to be a robust field. I think there's going to be a robust primary. Some would want to have a narrower field. However, I just don't think that's going to happen. Now, as each additional person comes into the race, one thing to watch at home is that improves the chances of former President Trump to get the nomination. He has a certain block of people who are with him no matter
30%,
what.
30 to 40%.
And if, say, Nikki Haley gets into the race in the middle of February, as we just saw, I would say that probably pulls more support away from a Ron DeSantis than it does a Donald Trump. So we're going to have a robust field, which means there's going to be a very competitive primary. I hope the process is one that is healthy, and I hope that whoever is nominated coming out of it, that everybody else coalesces behind that person to the best extent possible to give us the best chance of being successful in the November 24 presidential election.
When you were in Congress, you were a strong supporter of former President Trump. Do you anticipate continuing that support going forward in the 2024 presidential race?
We'll see how the field develops, how the primary develops.
You have a lot of people in that race that supported, or who could be in the race that supported you. There's going to be a lot of people pulling at you to support them.
The entire field. I know them all, get along with them all, have a lot of history with everybody who's in this field.
Tough decision then. So
I want to do my part to help grow the party. My focus isn't going to be narrowed or obsessed with just any one race, including the presidential race, which is the top of the ticket and certainly the most important.
So you want to get more Republicans elected to Congress, period, around the country?
Absolutely. And down ballot in the state legislature. I'm going to be active in this November's local elections. We have 62 counties in New York State. Some of the counties have really strong Republican parties.
They do.
There are other counties that don't.
And is that where you're going to go?
I want to do my best to be able to help these counties to be able to grow. I'll give you a perfect example. Monroe County, where Rochester is, they have a county executive race this November. They have a district attorney's race this November. And the party is going through changes. New leadership, there's a lot of growing that they need to do within that county. And it's an important county as it relates to not just Monroe County, but also the region and the entire state. So my eyes are focused all throughout New York, and also doing my part to help nationally. I
have to ask you this question because I know there's also a primary for the district attorney in Queens. I wondered if you would get involved in that. Queens is very much a Democratic county, but I wonder if you would take a look at that as well.
I'm willing to take a look at everything. And what's interesting in watching some of these Democratic primaries is that sometimes someone gets primaried way to their left. Even if that person's successful, even in a Democratic area, that opens an opportunity for a qualified alternative.
So let's talk about the city council race. Do you really think the Republicans can pick up some seats in the city council?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at what happened last November in the gubernatorial race. We were winning city council seats all across the entire city where there's a Democratic city council person. So if you are looking at the city council and trying to figure out, okay, where's the best opportunity, probably should take a look at the city council districts that we won last November and maybe start there. See who the current incumbent is, if they're running again, is there a primary, who the alternative is. I believe that there is absolutely a fantastic opportunity to be able to pick up some council seats.
Well, you know, you have a situation where the mayor of the city of New York, who is not running next fall, said that he was going to deal with public safety, and it's been an uphill battle to make the streets safer. So will this be, in a sense, running against the mayor, or will it be running against the public safety issues in each city council district?
I think in many respects you're running on the issue. Run on the issues. As far as Mayor Adams goes, there's so much that he can do. And that next level of what needs to get done really does require Albany to have not just his back, much more importantly, have the people of New York City's back. And I remember when Eric Adams was calling for judges to have discretion to weigh dangerousness, Danny O'Donnell, a white liberal Manhattan Democrat assemblyman, went after the black mayor saying, dangerousness is code for black, suggesting that Mayor Adams was calling for this new standard as if Mayor Adams was a racist. This is the personal nature of the attacks. How does it play out in the race as it relates to Eric Adams? I think if you are against giving judges discretion to weigh dangerousness, the mayor may get roped into that.
Well, see, here's the thing that's really interesting. The governor of the state of New York, who you ran against, has now, listening to your arguments that you made during the campaign, has requested the legislature to change the statute so the judges don't have to consider the least restrictive amount of bail. They can use discretion. It's unclear, though, whether the legislature is going to go along with it, and, you know, not to muddy the waters at all, but the success of the progressives in defeating her Court of Appeals candidate may not bode well for her ability to get the legislature to do it. What's your assessment of that?
Oh, you're spot on. And first off, she's not asking for enough. The least restrictive piece is one component. You need to give judges discretion to weigh dangerousness. It's not a partisan issue. As we just pointed out, even the Democratic mayor asked for it. There was this bipartisan call for a special session in 2022 to give judges discretion to weigh dangerousness, to raise the age. They finally had a special session in December. What do? They gave themselves a pay raise. Kathy Hochul goes along with it.
By the way, she got nothing out of it.
Yeah, just goes along with it. And tactically, if she was taking any advice from anyone, or maybe she could just figure this out on her own and take all the credit, you have to go to the people. People who are not just voting for you, but even the people who opposed you would be with you in opposing a pay raise for these legislators as a Christmas gift to themselves. You have the LaSalle nomination. You think you have the best nominee? Go to the people. You want to amend a cashless bail law, and you're not getting the support from the legislature, you go to the people. You move public opinion, have rallies and press conferences, create a setting where a state senator is getting back in their car, they're driving to Albany, and they are begging for a vote to fix cashless bail as quickly as possible. She doesn't do it. And because she doesn't do it, you know what we can predict? It's not going to work. She's going to fail. It's not too late for her to turn it around, but until she fixed that tactically, she's going to continue to get rolled, and when she gets rolled, we all get rolled.
So I can't let you go before I ask you about the Long Island Railroad. You live in Long Island, and there's been, you know, when they switched to, you know, East Side access and allowing people from Long Island where you live to choose whether they wanted to take the train into the West Side or the East Side, it's become chaotic nightmare. What's your take on it, and what should be done to fix it?
Well, I wouldn't put General Lieber in charge of one car of one ride, one day. I mean, that there is probably too much responsibility for him. It's not a political position. You're not there to be anyone's stooge. You have to balance the finances. You have to think ahead. You have to war game possible scenarios that are ahead. It should have been predictable. If you believe in what you're doing, it's going to be popular. You've been talking about it for decades. People are going to ride it. It's going to be more convenient. It's supposed to be safe. So, of course, there's going to be interest and demand, and people want to try it out. The idea that you wake up the day after and say, oh, gosh, I didn't realize that people would be using it. Now what do we do? What I hope for is, at this point at least, that they look at the response and they make the adjustments that are needed, and they do it very quickly. It was a very flawed rollout. They basically did a face plant. But tomorrow is a new day. Monday is a new day. They have an opportunity to get it right, but they're not there yet.
So the state legalized marijuana, and all of a sudden, illegal pot shops have sprung up all over New York City. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of them. Yet, there are only 3 legal pot shops that the state has been able to roll out. Is this some problem with red tape? I mean, what is going on that the state could only find some way to legalize 3 pot shops, and there are dozens everywhere?
This is not going to work the way that they have been doing this rollout. It's not going to be getting much better.
What's your solution?
So the way that they were putting out these requests for proposals, they're trying to get landlords to offer space. And essentially, the state was offering to backstop some entrepreneur, someone who wants to start one of these businesses up. If they don't pay their rent, the state's going to pay it for them just by design, as far as how business works, how life works. This is not going to work out. I think that you have to have prosecutors who are willing to enforce the law. If there are changes to law that need to be made, make those particular changes and protect quality of life. I think it's going to impact tourism. There are people who come to New York City and they have their young kids and they come from a place where you don't expose your kids to marijuana smell, and maybe you don't want to. So for someone who's in favor of legalizing recreational marijuana, we have never really had the conversation. Does that mean that you're okay with people smoking on the streets or filling up the streets with a smell that impacts the experience of walking through Times Square and other parts of the city? They never really even had that debate. They didn't think through it. So from the economic piece of starting up these businesses and the way the state's backstopping it, to the quality of life impacts, there's just so much that is so wrong with this rollout.
So you're saying that they never thought about the quality of life impacts. I mean, I know people who have complained to me about living in apartment buildings where somebody below them is smoking marijuana and it's coming up through the air conditioning system and they don't want it in their apartment.
That's right.
So, you know, was it, well, should they change the law?
Yeah,
should they make it not legal? What is your solution?
I think that there needs to be a great consideration to the other people who are impacted. It is one thing to give an individual a right, the ability, a privilege to be able to do something that they weren't able to do previously. But the idea that we're not even going to have a conversation of how giving one person the ability to smoke marijuana would impact others, there absolutely should be a change to the law.
So I have one last question. It's also sort of suburban related, and I know you live there. The governor has a new housing plan.
Terrible.
Let me finish at least.
Terrible.
Let's explain it. Our viewers need to know that her plan is to force localities, suburban places like where you live, to build more housing near train stations. How do you feel about that?
There's a reason why Kathy Hochul got crushed in suburbs like Suffolk and Nassau in last year's election.
Yeah, but this is where she wants them to build housing near train stations.
The takeaway of that election should not be, I know best, I know better than all of them, I'm now in charge, we're going to have Hochul control, not local control. I believe that you should respect the local way that these decisions are made with zoning. You have hearings, they come before the town board. That whole process is now going to be worse than it's ever been before by Albany coming in and Hochul saying, I know best.
But here's the question. Is it a bad idea to say, well, it makes sense if you build housing near transit hubs, then people could walk to the train station and take their trains wherever they need to go? I mean, is that a bad idea, or is it just ill-conceived in terms of the zoning?
Okay, so let's just say Kathy Hochul was sitting here and you were asking her, okay, let's talk about Ronkonkoma train station and how just to the east of it you have Patchogue Holbrook Road in downtown Holbrook, and talk to me about the sewer capacity in the area and what roads need to be expanded to be able to create what you're trying to do with the higher density that you're proposing. You're going to get glossy eyes. Why? Because she doesn't know about that train section and, you know, the outback on the north side of, you know, of the railway, and how busy that stretch is, and the infrastructure that's there, and how the road might not be big enough and the sewer infrastructure isn't good enough.
Or the water, or the power, or the electric lines, or any... Or,
you know who knows best?
I can't say gas because, you know, you're not allowed to have gas stoves
you'd be
anymore.
probably bleeped out right now with censorship. You know who knows best? The people who live there, and not Kathy Hochul.
So you say she should take into consideration local concerns, and that it might, do you say it might work some places but not others, or you just say it's a bad idea? Yeah,
let the locals decide what they want to do with their community. And the idea that, that Kathy Hochul knows best, I would say, is not a good message received off of all sorts of Long Islanders and other suburbs and other parts of the state, saying that they absolutely want someone else. They didn't want her to be the governor.
Lee Zeldin, the new PAC continues. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you.